Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit-Down. Guess what, folks? It's time. It is time to break out of this comic book corner shell, even though I am wearing a really kick-ass new Marvel tee. Time to get out of the comic book zone. Time to stop talking about Avengers Infinity War. Look, Avengers, followed by being sick, followed by lots of stuff at work, followed by Deadpool 2, has kind of limited me to talking to all you guys. And I have a bunch of movies that I gotta get into. So we're gonna do a good old-fashioned Seaman movie recap, right? We're gonna go back, hit all the movies that I saw pre and post Avengers Infinity War. And we start with an adapted book that is just jam-packed with pop culture. You know what I'm talking about, folks. But first, you gotta pull up your chair and take a seat. Today, I am talking Ready Player One. Oh, man. Let me put out a disclaimer. I didn't read the book. So anything I say is strictly off the movie and what the movie presents. Now, I've read some things that we'll talk about when we get into it, but let's set up for those unfamiliar with Ready Player One. It's based on a book that is just filled with pop culture. There's this video game creator named Halliday, along with his best friend Ogden Morrow. They create this virtual reality world called the Oasis. We are now in the future, so much so that overpopulation is really a problem, and we're getting to the point where in the slums, we're just stacking people on top of each other. In this world, we call that the stacks, literally because people are stacked on top of each other. And their homes are these small kind of square rectangular boxes, ultimately. So Halliday and Ogden Morrow create this virtual reality world called the Oasis. Allows everybody to step out, and if you don't have the money to live in nice, luxurious places that aren't overpopulated, the Oasis allows you to escape. It allows you to be in a fully submersive, real-life world that's massive. Now, the key to this film, no pun intended, or maybe a little bit, is that toward Ogden Morrow's, not Ogden Morrow, toward Halliday's death, he decides that he wants to give the Oasis away. He needs somebody new to run it. Then he's not just going to sell it. He's going to create a game within the Oasis where after you complete challenges, you get keys, and ultimately, if you can collect the 3 keys, you can then get the Easter egg. Such a good pun. You literally get an Easter egg that then wins you the game and grants you the Oasis. Thus, a businessman who once worked with Halliday, at least in the movie world, I don't know what it's like in the book, named Sorrento, played by Ben Mendelsohn. Awesome. We'll get there. But he basically wants to find all these keys so he can take the Oasis. He's essentially the competing company that doesn't do too well, IOI, and he hires all these people to basically just go into the Oasis, they call them Sixers, to win the keys. Where we pick up in the movie, it has been, I think years. It's been, Halliday's been dead for years, and no one has even found a key. Enter our lead, Wade, and we follow him and his avatar, Parzival, through the Oasis to find the 3 keys and stop IOI from obtaining and ruining the Oasis. So there's your basis, your rundown, right? And I think it really succeeded. Directed by the great Steven Spielberg. So much fun to see him playing in the sci-fi world again. Right, he's been on this run of just making Oscar caliber movie after Oscar caliber movie, and to see Steven Spielberg playing in a sci-fi world, really cool. Odd choice considering he's not really a video game guy, and that is kind of apparent in the movie. There are a couple things in the movie that work from the video game side of things, but for the most part, this movie doesn't really feel much like a video game. I think it's because of that disconnect. But all that said, I think ultimately what Spielberg pulled off here with this flick is a really fun adventure that just rules if you're a nerd, because there's so much packed in there for you. So, you know how I roll. We're going to start with the bad and with the good. This is going to be mild spoilers. This movie's been out for a while, obviously, because I didn't talk about it yet. But we'll drop a couple things, but for the most part, this will mostly be spoil-free. So let's jump in right off the bat. Like I was saying, one of the things that's kind of a first disconnect for me on the bad side of things is that disconnect, right? Especially coming off Jumanji, which made this made real life people operate inside of a video game feel like a video game, and it's not there. Now, right, Spielberg, perfect guy for nostalgia, especially 80s nostalgia, which is what I think the book mostly focuses on. This is just pop culture in general. But again, a good choice from that realm. Spielberg definitely, well, sort of knows how to work with pop culture in this movie. For the most part, very, very good. The one thing, though, that kind of was a letdown is, and it's a big question that everybody was wondering, was would there be too much or too little pop culture? And for me, I think it's just the right amount. You probably could have even done more, and it's one of the things that's both a positive and negative to the movie. Your pop culture, for the most part, I'd say 95% of it is background noise, which means you can watch this movie and never be distracted by pop culture. You can latch onto our main characters and their story and take it all the way down, and if you're not looking for it, obviously some things are like so blatant you can't miss them, i.e. like Godzilla, or not God, well, a form of Godzilla, or King Kong, or the T-Rex. It's so big you can't miss those references. But everything else is kind of in the background, so if you're focused on our main characters, you're not distracted. That's a real big plus. The downside to that, though, is by the time we get to our finale, in the third act, this massive battle for the Oasis, so many opportunities for cool pop culture team-ups that don't happen. We get one. Oh, and is it a doozy, man. 2 good guy characters team up to fight 1 bad guy character, all pop culture references, and it is so much fun. Like you get to that scene and you're just like, oh, why couldn't I see like a Battletoad hook up with like a Ninja Turtle or Batman, or I don't know. By the time we get to this massive battle, totally would have been cool diving into the pop culture and getting to see kind of cool team ups of groups that we wouldn't have thought, get to see like the Joker work with like, I don't know, Pac-Man or some, I don't know, like just come up with something zany that you could litter in to this big battle. Not a huge complaint, but just something that, again, missed opportunity. A lot of the bad in this movie, I think, is missed opportunities. So that obviously kind of one of the big ones for me. Cool team-ups, especially because we get one that's just so awesome. I would have liked to have seen a couple more. The other thing, too, with this is it's a little too 80s feeling structure-wise. This movie operates very much like an 80s movie. Which is kind of a detraction. It would have been cool to see 80s nostalgia and pop culture nostalgia utilized in a more current kind of film setup. Something that doesn't feel like it's right out of the 80s. Again, these are not things that are detrimental to the film, just like things that like could have enhanced it, I think, a little bit more. Like I said, the pop culture stuff, I just get stuck on things sometimes. Disappointing that we don't get more, but utilized well enough. The only other thing that really doesn't work for me, and it's Sorrento right at the end. The Sorrento that we are established with does not seem like someone who cares much about video games. He's really all about that almighty dollar. I mean, there's a scene where he says, we figured out that we could cover up 80% of a person's vision in the Oasis without giving them, with advertisements, in their line of sight, just always there if they're moving around, whatever, without giving them a seizure. So this guy's all about the mighty dollar. Toward the end of the movie, there's a moment that makes him freeze that's directly tied to, like, a true gamer. Right? Like if you're a true gamer, what he does is totally the reaction you would have in that moment. He's not a true gamer, so it kind of felt unauthentic. And that was disappointing. Now, based off of the little bit of research I did on what the book was, it seems like they've removed a few things that could have also enhanced the experience. It seems like they've removed a lot of the Halliday Ogden Morrow story, I guess, which was maybe, at least from what I read, sound like there was more of that in the book, which really could have paid off big, especially because Simon Pegg is utilized very little in the actual movie. We go through memories through this big, it's kind of like a library that, Halliday put in the Oasis, that's all his memories. So you can jump to certain things to try to find clues. So that's cool. Like, we get to see stuff that way, but their relationship, it definitely would have paid off more in the movie to spend some more time with them, maybe pre-Oasis, or maybe more flashback. I don't know, just something more. From what I read, if that was in the book, seems like material that could have been really useful in the movie. Same with Wade. Wade's character, I guess, in the book, like, goes to school in the Oasis. Something like that also could have really worked. So like, it seems like most of the challenges were changed, except the third one. It holds a little bit truer to the book. But without reading, I can't really speak too much on it, but from the little research I did, those are all things I think that could have been enhanced. Like I said, most of the bad in this movie isn't necessarily bad as much as it just feels like missed opportunities. So that being said, look, there's way more good in this movie than there is bad. So let's jump right into that. It starts with just being an old school Spielberg fan. It was cool to see him playing with all of this pop culture, so much pop culture that he himself was responsible for, and just to see him back in the sci-fi world. It's such a nice, refreshing, like, remember when Spielberg used to just make these awesome sci-fi movies and not like all these dramatic kind of Oscar caliber films? Like, I love anything Spielberg does, right? Like, he did The Post, touched to my journalism heart, man. I mean, pulled on those heartstrings. But as an old school Spielberg fan, really, really cool to see him playing kind of in this world. I mean, it's a movie for fanboys from arguably one of the greatest fanboys as far as film goes of all time. So it works, and he does. Like I said, he takes that pop culture and utilizes it to his advantage as far as littering the movie with it. It seems from talking to people that it's kind of like all the nostalgia pop culture references are kind of listed in the book, which makes sense because you can't see them, so you got to put them in there somewhere. Whereas just the visualization, visually utilizing the world around him to just pop all this stuff. Oh man, any time it pops up front and center, you're like, awesome. And then when it's in the background and you're looking for it, you go, that's cool, but it doesn't ever distract from the movie, and I think he utilizes it really well there, despite missing maybe some opportunities to team up some characters together in the final battle. And like I said, there's really only 3 or 4 pop culture references that actually are major players in the game, so, and in the movies, which is nice because that means he didn't overload you with pop culture. And look, the CGI in this movie, too, man, is just astounding. It looks so good. Oh, man, I mean, when you're in there, right, like, at first you're like, gosh, we have these real-life human characters, but we're going to deal with, like, Avatar-looking characters the whole movie, so it's going to be kind of like a cartoon. Nah, man, these, like, when they come in on close-ups, the detail in the the Avatar CGI is just awesome. And the fact that, like, all the pop culture stuff looks accurate and looks real is just, it's really, really well done. And it blends really nicely with the real world. Spielberg does a really good job of going back and forth to give us a little bit of everything. Now, granted, the only person we're really bouncing back to is Wade until we get to meet all the other people, because that's a big thing in the movie and the concept of the game, right? Is the people you meet in the Oasis, you become friends with them, but you don't really know them. They're avatars. And that's a huge part of the movie. Human connection becomes a real big part late in the game. Not in the game, in the movie, late in the movie. Human connection, huge thing that's kind of talked about, and I love the way they handle all the human connection stuff, even so much so that by the time we get to the end, it's, oh my, look out, earthquake. No, just bumped the desk. Maybe by the time we get the whole movie, especially watching it the second time, you really feel the drive home of human connection is important. And because of that, we save them actually meeting each other toward the end. And when it happens, you're just like, oh man, that's awesome. And it plays into some jokes and things that have kind of been pre-established early with one character. And it creates some twists for when they meet with the concept of they're not who you think they'll be. And I liked all of that. It all plays really, really well. The key reveals, if we're talking CGI, because of that 50-50, every time the keys appear, it kind of changes the structure of the world, and all of that is just visually stunning. And then there's a really awesome what they're able to do with the avatars and what they're able to do with the world. Artemis, this is kind of one of my mild spoilers. Artemis disguises herself as Goro from Mortal Kombat for a scene where after Parzival wins the first key, he becomes like a superstar. Now, apparently this, again, was also something that was done better in the book. I don't know. But the first time he gets kind of put in a spot where like everyone's like, oh, it's Parzival, Goro grabs him, pulls him into a room, and then a really, really funny thing happens. That's a pop culture reference that's just wonderfully executed. I won't spoil that. But again, that visual look is just amazing. The story is really strong. I really liked the writing. I really attached to the story really quickly. It makes me want to go read the book. But it's something that you're able to just kind of hop in the driver, like in the passenger seat, and you just go on this awesome ride. And I love that. And I love that Easter eggs are a big part of the movie, considering Easter eggs have become a massive thing in movies and video games everywhere. The utilization of Easter eggs, the way they use Easter eggs in the final challenge, just all really cool things. And the fact that it's a movie, and this was told to me later too, a movie about an Easter egg that debuted on Easter weekend. So clever. But all the Easter egg stuff in the movie is just great if you're looking for it. And I love that a movie that's ultimately about getting an Easter egg litters itself with so many. And speaking of, Easter eggs, one of the things where you can find a lot of Easter eggs if you're really looking, I think there's over 140, maybe more, with it throughout the movie, but the weapons, man. And that leads me to something that I love. The one video game trick that Spielberg, I thought, nailed is the way the characters utilize items. Like any video game, you get money, or more recent video games, you get money so you can buy things and you can have an item list. And the way they do it is really cool, man. Like, they're small, so they literally throw up like a digital wallet. They scroll through, they find the item they want, they pull the item out, they toss it down on the ground, and this little digital item grows to the item that they can then use, because we're inside the video game. So they can do all those things, and that's a really cool way, right? Like if you get a gun or you get a car or you get an upgrade, you shrink it down and throw it in this wallet that then disappears. That was awesome. I love the way they utilize like all of that stuff. And then when players die, all of their loot falls. If you are a hack and slash fan for old school video games where the concept is just kind of mow through waves and waves of villains, but if you get all these coins and stuff, but if you die, all your coins drop, and other people can then pick them up. That happens in the video game. And that's really cool. Parzival uses that. He's out of gas for the very first challenge, which is a race. So he heads toward the back to scoop up coins from players that are destroyed. And if you die in Oasis, you can respawn, but you lose all your items. And that's such a cool way to be. And that's the other thing, like the video game elements of just what the Oasis is, right? Like you can go to like a war zone to like where all it is just a giant war, and while you're there you can pick up tons of coins and artifacts and different items. And it's cool that there are places in Oasis so you can do that. But if you die, you lose all of it, which puts like a real life kind of like, because some of the stuff translates to real life stuff. You can take the money that you earn, go to stores that can then ship you real life things, i.e. Wade is poor. After he gets the first key, he's given like 100,000 coins or 10,000 coins, something like that. So he's able to go and actually buy a VR suit that gives him the ability, like if you touch him, he feels it, which has a really nice moment in the movie as well. And it feels like a really, really big open world, which is kind of the way video games are now. And all of that stuff I thought is really, really good. And then, as I mentioned, this movie's all about human connection, and they really drop it in. That it's iconic. It's ironic that in a world that's so totally detached from reality, the big thing that Halliday weaves into the whole story and the whole game is all this stuff about connection. Different elements of the game tie back to his missed connections, or like things that he didn't do because he couldn't connect with another person. Like I mentioned before, I just love all that stuff. I love, the way there's a sequence where, you got to take the leap. It's one of the things that they have to do. Meeting and working with actual people like in Oasis versus outside of the Oasis. Just all this stuff, you know, I think works really well. And now and I like that. There's some really good twists in the movie too, that end up playing really, really well. One is so minor, of a twist, right? That it happens early in the movie, and the payoff ends up being on the back end. And when it hits, you're like, "Oh my god! If they never had that happen, then you can't win the game by the end." So really, I like all the twists. I like the way that how he structures the game. He puts twists in the game. Like, you have to listen to words, and Wade, the first challenge, Wade figures it out based on what he says, and then he operates that way in the game, and you're like, oh wow, that's awesome. Totally something that would be like hidden in a video game. So all that stuff works really well. For me, the 3 sequences finding the keys, I loved all of them. The first one is this massive race that just gives you the opportunity to litter it with pop culture. It's fairly quick. But the first drive-through, which is kind of like a drive-through New York City, is a lot of fun because Parsifal's in the back, so you get to see a lot of stuff. Other than that, I mean, maybe it would have been cool to have a little bit more of that, but what it is works really well. The second challenge leads to maybe one of the best parts of the entire movie. I will not spoil anything with this challenge, but it takes a piece of pop culture and puts it in the game world that the characters enter in order to find the key. To find the second key, you have to go to this pop culture reference as a physical place, and it's spectacular. The way they utilize old footage with utilizing the CGI characters and then taking that old footage and turning it into something more than what it was, just so unbelievably well executed. Can't talk about it because I thought it was the best part of the movie. Totally different than the challenges in the book, but this one, so cool. And then the third challenge, obviously, is the big battle, and I love the fact that it involves having to play old video games, and it involves literally having to find an Easter egg in order to win the last key to get the Easter egg. The whole fight battle is great. There's tons of pop culture references there, but there's the big bad and 2 guys teaming up together, awesome. And there's one other character that happens in the battle that gets kind of purchased and like, hey, take this, and you look at it, it's like, oh god, and he throws it out the window, and that whole sequence is a ton of fun. Look, I love the artifacts in this game. The Zemeckis Cube, so cool. I love that Spielberg calls it the Zemeckis Cube, because Robert Zemeckis was the director to the first Back to the Future. So that's kind of like a nice little add-in there. And what the Zemeckis Cube does, really awesome and utilized really well for our key players. And then, like, outside of that, the characters in this movie are really the biggest win. You save that kind of for the end because they're awesome. Ty Sheridan does such a great job in the movie voicing Parzival, and I really like how he is. I just love everything that Ty Sheridan does. He just brings a ton of. I mean, you're doing all this voice work, you got to make it pop, and he really does. He makes you buy into Parzival. Olivia Cooke, who plays Artemis in Oasis, Samantha in the real world. I love her character. I love the direction that her character has and the reasons for how she handles herself in the Oasis. And when it's revealed, I like that it's something that she's self-conscious about, but Wade isn't. And I love their relationship. Their relationship in the movie together is really awesome. And the fact that, like, Parzival kind of, like, starts to fall in love with her, and she's like, bro, you don't even know me. I this is fake me. I don't look like this. And just their acting is great. Like I said, Ben Mendelsohn, he's just becoming like the king of bad guys nowadays, but he's so good at it. Oh my god. Ben Mendelsohn playing Sorrento, awesome. Also, love the avatar that Sorrento is. He's one of the few avatars that's an actual direct reference. I won't say it, see if you can pick it up. But oh man, like, it's just such a cool, like, it popped on the screen. I was like, oh, that's gotta be what that is. He has very distinctive hair qualities that I think is what makes him a giveaway. But he's just great. He's totally evil, but like not over the top evil, right? Like he's just an evil corporate head. And there's another movie that I saw that has an evil corporate head that kind of dialed it up a little too much. We'll talk about that movie down the road. But this one, perfect amount, man. He's the perfect amount of crazy, and perfect amount of smart and cunning. His smarts and his cunning are really good in the movie. He presents himself as a really awesome villain. Then the other characters, I'm not going to use their actual actor names because if I do that, it could spoil some stuff in what happens in the movie. If you're unaware, like I was, of who all the actors were outside of the lead, like the main leads, it did for one, H's character, it's Parzival's best friend in the Oasis. H is very interesting, and if I said who it was, but the person who plays H does a phenomenal job. Sho and Daito are his other two buddies that are kind of in his clan. They're awesome too, really well delivered, and the twist with one of them is another awesome thing there. So that whole group, I just love that group. I love the way they work together, and the dynamic, and then I love how they interact with each other in the real world. And their real world first kind of team up scene takes place in a van while the last mission is happening. Why Wade is trying to go get the last key. They're in this van that's driving around, and they're all kind of strung up so that they can be in the Oasis, and it just tons of hilarity because all of a sudden the van has to slam on the brakes, things move, and those characters do the same stuff in the game. So that's really, really cool. But I just love that connection. I believe they're called the High Five. They're the first 5 on the leaderboard. After Wade gets it, everyone in his group then also finds the key. So everybody can keep finding keys, right? Once you find one, it's not like it disappears. There's an unlimited amount of keys, but you have to have all 3. So they are called the High Five. Not really presented very well in the movie, but I love that name. And they're just awesome. You love taking the ride with them. And then finally, for me, the one guy that I just absolutely love, T.J. Miller plays this guy called IROC. Now, the character does not match T.J. Miller whatsoever. Listening to T.J. Miller voice this character is kind of jarring, and it doesn't quite fit, but I think that's the point, right? Because your avatar can be anything you want. In my head, T.J. Miller's real-life character, who we never meet, is, kind of one of those, basement dwellers that, lives in mom's basement and just sits there all the time and plays video games. He seems like he's one of those guys. But the stereotype for people like that, they're kind of loserish, and he's this really cool badass villain character. And I love him. He's hysterical, and the fact that he doesn't match with what his avatar looks like is just perfect for the concept that you can be whoever you want. So he's this crazy badass looking dude. He looks awesome. And he is, oh man, T.J. Miller just always brings the funny. I love him. Finally, that brings us to Mark Rylance, who plays Halliday. He's awesome. Again, I wish there could have been more of him. And he's maybe almost a little too stereotypical to what video game folks used to be back in the 80s, so maybe that's why it works. If he was supposed to be portraying a current video game person, I don't think it would. But considering he comes from an age where, video game people were kind of outside nerd, kind of like the comic, just the typical nerd was more accurate, I guess, back in the 80s. So I think that's why he still works, and he plays that role very well. Even if it is dialed up a little too much, works really well. And then, of course, Simon Pegg, who I absolutely adore. Really awesome as Ogden Morrow for the very, very little amount that we get, which is why I would have liked more of Morrow and Halliday's story, so we could have gotten some more Simon Pegg. But look, great cast. Despite not being a video game guy, Steven Spielberg, I think, succeeds here with this movie. It's a lot of fun. It takes you on this just really fun adventure. And it's so worth every minute of the movie. It's a ton of fun. It looks beautiful. Enjoyed the heck out of it. That's all I gotta say. What do you guys have to say? Hit those comments. Let me know what you thought about the movie. If you read the books and have seen the movie, what was I missing? Where did I miss anything? Was there anything that detracted or added to the movie because you read the books? Hit the comments. Let me know all that stuff. If you haven't seen it, have I enticed you? I hope so. Go check out Ready Player One. As always, if you are new here to the old Cinema Sit Down, hit that subscribe button and the little bell so you get alerts every time I make a new video. For the Seaman Cinema Sit Down, I am the Seaman, and I'm signing off. Peace!